Welcome to the Strange Encounters YouTube channel, your portal to the unexplained and the extraordinary. I'm thrilled to invite you on a mind-bending journey into the unknown, where we dive deep into allegedly true personal stories of encounters with aliens and UFOs. This has been an exciting week as we have heard from a high-level intelligence officer, David Grush, with the United States government that the U.S. is in possession of partial and intact alien spacecraft. The only surprising thing about this is that someone was willing to come forward to tell the truth. Let's hope that this gets the ball rolling towards some real, honest disclosure. We want to hear from everyone out there. Have you experienced something inexplicable? Do you have your own strange encounters to share? We'd love to feature your stories on the channel. Send them to verystrangencounters@gmail.com, and who knows, your story might be the next one to send shivers down our spines. Remember, the truth is out there, waiting to be discovered. So, buckle up, hit that subscribe button, and get ready for an incredible journey into the world of strange encounters. MiLab Abductions by Little Phoenix. My name is Sean, and I am a Black Ops military abductee, or MiLabs for short. The journey began when I was young, and my mother asked me to go out of town with my grandpa for a couple of days. I agreed, and my mother prepared me with winter gear to go further up north towards Selwyn Lake in northern Saskatchewan, Canada. My grandfather and I were going up north on a snowmobile towards the campsite between the border of the Northwest Territory and Saskatchewan. Along the way, I witnessed wildlife such as caribou, and we made a fire and went to bed. We got up the next morning and ate breakfast, and we went out so I could learn how to live off the land. It was my first time ever going up north, and I saw many species of animal in the area. One night, my grandpa told me to go to the frozen lake to phone home with his emergency phone. It was malfunctioning, making static noises, and I looked up, and for the first time in my life, I was looking at a red anti-gravity craft. It was so bright that it looked like a fireball with a light trail, and it was doing impossible maneuvers. I ran back to notify my grandpa about what was over our campsite. I reached the camp and ran inside and immediately told him, "There's a UFO outside, come quick," in our Aboriginal language. He didn't believe me at first, but he witnessed it and we just ignored it and went to bed. The next morning, he told me that I had gotten out of bed and he spoke to me, but I was non-responsive. He said that I had a black recurve bow, and he said that I put on my winter gear and bow and left the cabin. After that, he went back to bed. I told him I don't remember doing that. I only remember going to bed. I had a feeling deep inside I was somehow mind-controlled and abducted by either aliens or the military. After all of this, we went back to our hometown. Years later, I returned, and I saw moving stars over our campsite. I went to bed, and as I was laying in bed falling asleep, I felt my soul begin to spin slowly and at first, then faster. I felt a spinning vortex and my mind went black. I heard a MiLab abductee by the name of Anthony Zender on YouTube talking about his experiences as a super soldier. I have a similar memory about Operation Rainbow 52 that he mentioned, and I believe I am a secret space program experiencer. I saw a UFO up close. This was my experience by Bridge Existing 5975. Today, at morning, I was out in my garden, sitting in my chair, looking down at the nearby valley, which starts roughly 20 meters from where I sat, and it goes down to roughly 40 to 60 meters deep with a big horizon. I started my daily meditation, which consists of clearing my mind, no thoughts allowed, only focusing on my breathing with eyes closed. I'm probably 10 minutes into meditation when this happened. I felt like static electricity was building up in the air, like when you rub the balloon onto your clothes and your hair goes up. Mind you, I was wearing heavy clothing. It was 5 degrees Celsius. I felt like something was coming up. The charge moved upwards. I opened my eyes probably 3 to 4 seconds after I started feeling the ascending of the electric field. When I opened my eyes, it felt like time stopped, and roughly 40 or 50 meters away, basically in front of me, hovering over the valley, there was a gray metallic-like shiny craft, looking like a flying saucer, but it was not the typical dome and body. It was like it was welded or molded together, and the bottom is roughly 3/4 of the whole craft. It was probably 7 meters wide, and the top bottom was probably 2 meters in height, with the rounded edges, so it looked pretty big. It had no windows, legs, or anything. It was like this metallic object was molded into one piece. No writings, windows, edges, lights, anything. I couldn't see the bottom or the side of it. I only saw it from one angle, which remained consistent. After I recognized what I saw, I wanted to grab my phone and take a picture, but I couldn't move my hand, head, or eyes. I just looked straight at the craft, but I couldn't move. But it was nothing like I was paralyzed. It felt like time or my perception of time stopped or slowed down. So I opened my eyes, I see this craft, I can't move. 5 to 6 seconds after I open my eyes, my head gets bombarded, like the craft talked inside my head, forcing the message inside my thought. It said in my native language, sounding like me, but with a lot calmer and softer voice, really calmly, "You are not taking care of your planet. It needs to change now. You, all the people, will have to bring the change. You can't give away responsibility because you give away responsibility with power, which corrupts the humans." It repeated 3 times with the exact wording, like a chant or an audio recording. Same tone, same wording. What caught my attention was a wording mistake it made at the end. After the message, it started to drift away, at first with a little hover, but I couldn't track it with my head, only my eyes. It felt like something is holding back, like it takes time to turn my neck, like when you pull a rubber and it gets a lot of tension on the end. After it hovered a few meters left and away from me, the tension started to ease, and I could track it with my eyes and head, and it suddenly felt like time started to flow, and it shot off to the distance really, really fast, exactly the same direction, like continuing the momentum, but with my perspective of time speeding up, and when it reached normal, the acceleration was instant. I grabbed my phone, I wrote down the message. After that, I checked the time and saw that 19 minutes passed after the meditation started. So the experience felt like it took place in like 20 seconds. It lasted probably at least 5 minutes. One last note, while the experience lasted, I was in a forced calm state. I remember that I felt no fear, no anxiety, adrenaline, or anything. I was just calm. But after it sped away, it felt like all of the things just rushed into my body. A huge amount of adrenaline and feeling that the end is near, like really terrified. This feeling lasted for 3 to 5 minutes. Copycat Alien by Frankland SM. I have never spoken about this experience due to concerns I may be labeled or judged, so I've kept it to myself for a long time. But I feel now is the time for me to talk about my experience. I live in a small village in the north of England. Never been much for the great outdoors, let alone hiking or camping. I was watching a YouTuber that I enjoy and saw that he did a camping video with friends and recorded it to upload to his channel. I thought to myself, that looks like a lot of fun. So I started making plans to go on my first hike, camping trip, and invited 2 friends along with me. One declined, citing personal commitments on the proposed date, but realistically, I know it was because he just didn't want to go. My other friend was super excited about the idea and agreed to join me. Fast forward to the week of the trip. It was fairly tepid weather, 18 degrees Celsius, so not too warm and not too cold either. We are out in the countryside walking and just having a conversation, and I all of a sudden just get this weird feeling, a pit in my stomach, like we're being watched or followed. I realized that this is the type of thing people might feel before they go missing, so I mentioned it to my friend. Thankfully, he took it seriously and agreed to stop for a while so that we could have a look around. The landscape was rolling hills and fields as far as the eye could see. Not much in the way of trees or vegetation, but some sheep in fields nearby. As we sat on a nearby rock wall, the panic started to subside, and I felt a lot better. I think it was just one of those sudden rushes of paranoia that maybe overreacted to the stimulus of being miles from another human other than my friend. So we pressed on and kept walking. We had about 4 miles to cover before we reached our camping spot. We passed by some lovely, picturesque little rivers and creeks with small footbridges and dog walking trails. It was truly a lovely part of the country. Finally, we reached our campsite and we immediately unpacked our tent and pitched it. I set up our gas ring and a pot and started cooking something because I was hungry. As it was getting dark, we started to place our lights around the site. We picked up some small luminescent lights that had spikes to go into the ground to keep them in position. So our site was pretty well illuminated and we could see around ourselves pretty well. The sun was setting and it was truly a pleasure to be out in the country. I felt a sense of relief for having left everything behind for a while. My phone, computer, tablet, everything. There was no clicking or tapping or any noise beside our laughter and good fellowship. All was well until nightfall. My friend had gone into the tent at this point and fallen asleep. I was still sat outside in my pop-up chair I had brought with me. Nearby, I heard a sound like knocking, like someone knocking on a wooden door or hitting a tree with a stick. I dismissed it as probably just movement in the wild or some kind of animal running past, but boy, was I wrong. Literally 10 seconds later, a figure emerged from out of the darkness. It stood approximately 5 feet 3 inches tall and was all white and completely naked. It had no reproductive organs as far as I could see, large black eyes, no visible nose or ears, a tiny slit for a mouth, and was completely hairless. It just stood motionless, illuminated by our campsite lights. I simply froze in my chair. I had no idea what to do. The word I wanted to speak was hello, but as I opened my mouth to speak the word, it was as if it had been sucked out of my brain. I stayed in that state for around 30 seconds. For whatever reason, I managed to be able to move my right arm, so I raised it with my fingers spread. I was going to wave to it, see if I could elicit some kind of physical response. As soon as my hand was up and in position, the thing standing across the campsite from me did the exact same thing, but with its left arm. I moved my arm side to side, waving at it. Strangely, it seemed to do the same back to me. As I stopped, it stopped. As I started again, it started again. It was bizarre, to say the least. At this point, I decided to stand up from my chair and stand opposite it, with my arms to my side. It did the same. I managed to say hello to it as I felt it meant me no harm. I figured if it wanted to harm me, it probably would have done it by now. When I said hello, it didn't seem to react in any visible way. I was confused as to what it wanted. If it was lost or was maybe attracted to our site because of the lights. I thought to myself, maybe I should get a snack bar out of my bag. Perhaps it's hungry. This was the only thing I could think at the time, so I knelt down and started looking in my bag. Whilst I was doing this, I looked across to it, and it was in the exact same position, copying exactly what I was doing. I thought, okay, this is really weird. Whilst in this position, I heard the tent behind me begin to unzip, and my friend poked his head out and asked me why I was still awake. As soon as he started talking, I heard running behind me. I spun around and saw whatever it was I was interacting with was gone. I didn't want to tell my friend about what just happened because the moment of paranoia earlier, so I kept it to myself. I don't know if anyone else has had any similar experiences to this, but safe to say I didn't sleep at all during the trip. When I got home, I was pretty unwell for a few days afterwards and was unable to sleep properly for quite a while. Red Orange Ball Flying Out of the Italian Sea by Dave 28466. So my dad told me about a thing that happened to him a few years ago, and my question is if anybody experienced something like this as well. So in 1990, my dad was on a holiday trip with some friends. They were in Italy staying in a hotel. The hotel was located directly by the sea. One day they were sitting in a restaurant and a waiter comes into the room and tells everyone to come to the beach as fast as they can. As soon as my dad and his friends arrived, they saw a red-orange ball appear slowly out of the water. It started rising up slow at first, but was going faster and faster. At some point, it just vanished up into the sky. My dad told me it was a few meters in width, but that was hard to determine because of the distance that they had to the object. He had never seen anything like this ever in his life. I don't know where the city that happened, but I still think that this story is quite interesting. I hope someone has experienced something similar and maybe even has a video of it. Tell me if you experienced that too. My Experiences by Sci-Fiing. My first experience occurred when I was 9 years old, in the car with my mother after she picked me up from an after-school program. It was already dark outside, and I remember looking up at the stars as we were stopped on the road briefly. There was one star that was particularly bright, which caught my attention while stationary, though it stood out to me amongst the rest for some reason. I was staring at it for a short period of time when, all of a sudden, this light instantaneously accelerated far into the distance, clearing the horizon in less than 2 seconds. I screamed, "What the?" out loud immediately as I had no control over my reaction. It blew my mind. My mother was not happy with me, to say the least, and she certainly did not believe me at the time when I told her what happened. I was sure this was not a reflection, as this was seemingly a star at first to me. I remember vividly what I saw. My second experience happened in 2020, and little did I know that this would be the most profound experience I would have to this day, at least with the UFO phenomena. Luckily, I was with my girlfriend at the time, so there was a second witness present for multiple experiences to validate them with me. We were driving down winding country roads in the middle of the day in Silverton, Oregon. I was the one driving, and my partner was in the passenger seat. As we were going over a hill, I saw a peculiar object descending below the tree line off in the distance. I had to go over what I'd just witnessed in my head before I spoke of it to my partner, but it just didn't seem like a plane or a drone. It was very far in the distance, so I could not define its shape with great detail yet, but it looked like a shiny ball in a way, although decently large for that distance. Since we were driving over a hill, I could tell that the object was in between two sets of tree lines, and it descended from right to left below the nearest tree line. It was too low to the ground, and it just instinctively didn't make sense to me. I felt this with a good sense of urgency, so I told my partner that I just saw something odd and to keep a lookout for any UFOs. I said this half jokingly, not as to make a fuss over something I wasn't sure of. My partner nodded and accepted it without much concern. We continued down the hill and onto a straight road with fields and farms spread out on either side. A minute or two went by, and suddenly I had the urge to look to the left, and while we were passing by a wheat field, there was a metallic craft hovering silently over it, perfectly still. It was clearly a craft, stationary about 30 feet above the field and only about 60 yards away. I was speechless for a few seconds until I finally screamed to my partner, "Look, there it is," as it was the same object that I had seen up the road. I had to switch between looking at the craft and the road because of course I was still driving. Once my partner and I both had eyes on it, we just stared long and quietly, not that we really had a choice. We were taking in something that we have never seen in our lives for the first time. It is very hard to describe the exact form of this craft. However, it was shaped like a metallic and perfectly smooth egg, with its apex pointed to the left. It didn't have any ridges, bolts, or defining structures other than a small protrusion or a separate hard angle sticking out of the top near the apex. I'm not sure why, but it seemed as though the part sticking out wrapped around the backside of the craft, or maybe it was slightly sticking outward from the craft. I'm not too sure how to fully explain this. I know that it might look like a blimp or balloon in a recreation photo I made, but it was nothing of the sort. My partner entirely agrees that this was a legit craft. About as legit as you can get. My partner and I drew the shape after it and confirmed that we both saw the same thing. We both had vision of this craft for about 8 to 10 seconds before a line of trees blocked our line of sight. I pulled the car off to the side of the road and made a legendary illegal U-turn and quickly headed back toward the field. Right when we arrived, the craft was gone, and it was now just an empty wheat field. For us, that was even more of a confirmation that this was highly anomalous. I was expecting there to be some form of farming equipment or anything to even closely resemble what we saw, but it was now just an empty field. Prior to moving to Oregon, we had known that the area we moved to was a hotspot for anomalous activity. As a matter of fact, a few towns over they hold a UFO festival every year to remember the famous McMinnville UFO case in 1950. This experience ignited my passion and desire to seek out what this phenomenon is all about. Months later, I learned of the CE5 process. Just a note here from Strange Encounters, in case you're wondering what CE5 is all about, it's a close encounter of the fifth kind, and it refers to human-initiated contact with extraterrestrial life forms or advanced interstellar civilizations, claiming direct communication between aliens and humans. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind was first coined by Stephen M. Greer. In a CE5 event, individuals or groups use specific protocols to establish communication or interaction with extraterrestrial beings. These protocols primarily involve the use of contact meditation and the use of sounds or signals. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind is also referred to as human-initiated close encounter. Now, back to our story. I have made definitive contact multiple times using different forms of the typical CE5 process that Stephen Greer teaches. However, I don't believe he was the sole creator of this idea. From what I understand, people have been making contact with these beings for as long as modern human history. I believe it has more to do with human intention rather than the physical process in which you go about enacting your intention through. I realized this during my first time going out for a CE5 with the same partner who experienced the craft in the field with me. We drove to Cape Kiwanda on the Oregon coast and arrived just after sunset. It was brisk outside. However, our curiosity and excitement trumped any other feelings. We were sorting out our desired location and were preparing to meditate so that we could get some form of balance. We had not even begun the actual method of CE5 yet, when I looked up to check how many stars were visible since we had spent a few minutes getting settled. I saw what looked like a bright satellite traveling linearly just above our heads at a relatively fast speed, but seemingly normal for a satellite. It was even brighter than the North Star or Venus, which is why it caught my attention, and I was watching this light closely to see if there were any changes in trajectory. But for the first few seconds, it just continued straight at a steady speed. I asked in my mind, "What are you?" And before I could completely finish the thought of that question in my head, the light stopped on a dime and was stationary for about 2 seconds, and then instantly changed course, traveling back in the same direction from which it approached. I immediately pointed this object out to my partner, and she quickly was able to locate it in the sky. When we were both aware of this light, it stopped moving in a linear way and changed to a movement that I could only describe as a drunken jellyfish. It would fly at incredible speeds to one portion of the sky, then it would zigzag in really tiny motions. I know this is hard to visualize, but at times it appeared as if someone was holding the object in midair with their hand. It was that type of randomized jitters and shakiness. When I saw it would move like a jellyfish, it would pulse itself in a direction and its velocity would gradually decrease until another burst of momentum forward in a different direction. I began asking the craft if it could perform basic maneuvers such as stop, go right, go up, and it would perform these almost instantly when asked through my head or verbally. I told my partner to try the same, in which I stopped communication with it while my partner made verbal and non-verbal commands, and it was also responding to those as well. We understood what was occurring when we understood that this light was sentient, contact was made and validated, at least to us personally. Funny enough, we did try to ask it to land, to flash brightly, to teleport, to shoot off into the distance and come back. Those types of commands did not work. We were under the stars with this light for about 45 minutes until the cold became unbearable. Another peculiar aspect of this night was that my partner informed me that I forgot my camera in the car as we were walking up to the spot for the CE5. For some reason, I just didn't care, which is not a typical response for me to have, especially when I brought it for something that I was excited to capture. I have reason to believe that CE5s work best when no camera or recording equipment is present and the group or individual is performing the CE5 purely for the sake of making contact, rather than having the additional intentions of capturing it for proof. I believe the consciousness involved with the phenomena is aware of human intention to some degree, whenever it chooses to allow contact to be acknowledged. Bright Lights, Technology, and a Terrifying Humanoid Being by Faceless Owl. I've been waiting a long time to share my experience publicly. While this has turned into an important personal experience, for the longest time, I haven't felt the need to share it. However, after discovering this community, I think this is a good place to put it all out there for others to see. To frame a little background before the story, this event happened in my most grounded and down-to-earth point in my entire life. I had been working post-college for years in my field, becoming efficient, successful, and motivated. I had gotten married, bought a house. In general, life was good and on the up. On a random evening, the following events happened. For a long time, I wrote it off as sleep paralysis until I started seeing things in the news about government disclosure, TTSA, the Nimitz events, etc. I became drawn to look into the UFO topic as a casual pastime. Then I began to experience events of high strangeness, as did family and friends around me. I'll describe those things on another day. Now I think this whole topic is much more complex than some aliens from across the galaxy. In that regard, this community seems to be more understanding than anywhere else I have yet to find. Hopefully, there's some discernment to be discovered from people sharing these experiences. Here is mine. At some point in the night, I groggily awoke, laying on my back. Usually, I am a heavy sleeper. My wife, who is a very light sleeper, was sleeping on her side, facing away from me to my left. I noticed what I thought was a car driving down the street, passing my house. The glow of the headlights shone across my room in a sweeping motion and seemed rather bright and close. The light seemed to be angled slightly from my right to left. My bedroom is on the second story of the house. I wondered if a car had backed in my neighbor's driveway across the street, or had even pulled into my driveway. I thought about a night a few years earlier when my car was broken into and some items were stolen. Cursing in my head a bit, I thought that I should get up and peep through the blinds to check it out. I also distinctly remember the pistol that I had laid on my bedside table before going to bed this evening. I then tried to sit up and hop out of bed to go take a look. Strangely, I was unable to move at all. I felt normal, mentally and physically, yet completely paralyzed when I tried to move. I remember looking around the room clearly, as my eyes were well adjusted to the dark. I tried a couple of half-hearted times to stand, and nothing happened. A bit of panic set in, and I remembered hearing about sleep paralysis. I didn't know what it really entailed, but reasoned that perhaps my nerves were deactivated from deeply sleeping due to this circumstance. That thought somewhat calmed me. Then there was a pull to go back to sleep, but I heavily resisted. I tried to speak to get the attention of my wife, but I could not open my mouth. I then paid note of my breathing. At this point, the light shifted either in an upward or downward motion and stopped. They were cool white with a tinge of blue. My best description would be the color temperature 6,000 Kelvin HID car headlamps. So far, I believe this all happened over the span of what seemed like 30 seconds to a minute. Then, I began to process what was happening a bit more clearly. I thought about whether I was dreaming or awake. I thought that I couldn't be dreaming because of the clarity of my thoughts, my clear senses, the temperature of the room, the feel of the sheets, and the ability to control my breathing, coupled with corresponding physical sensation of taking in air. I used controlled breathing as a gauge to measure if I was coherent, as the only control I seemed to have over my body was my breath and my eyes. I thought about the safe in the closet that housed my rifle, and if only I could get my wife's attention so that she could get it. At first, I wasn't thinking for what purpose, only that we needed protection and something was definitely not right. As I continued to look at my backlit windows, the thought of aliens crossed my mind. I envisioned the classic gray alien archetypes. My mind went through a brief process of denial at the absurdity of that thought, assuming I was dreaming. I tried to force myself awake. I thought about pinching or slapping myself, but I was still paralyzed. Mentally and visually, things got a bit hazy, very briefly. I wasn't sure if I drifted off to sleep for a moment and had awoken. Now, I thought maybe I had been asleep the whole time and was finally waking up. That made sense to me. I began looking around again with slightly blurry vision, and I didn't try to move or get up as my eyes adjusted again. My body felt relaxed and calm, pleasantly comfortable. I think I remember a tinnitus-like sound in my ears. The type of sound movies portray as an explosion knocking someone's hearing out. I don't recall for how long or if this sound lasted as my focus shifted, but I do think it subsided. The light was still glaring through the windows as my wall directly in front of me came into focus. My vision was clear again. I saw a cantaloupe-sized, dull gray, metallic sphere of sorts, radiating some kind of multicolored light. The light was in motion around the sphere and dancing in different colors. Hues were mostly in the orange, red, and yellow spectrum, but there were hints of green and purple. The light being emitted was like a halo of many pointed slivers, but visually difficult to comprehend and not easy to focus on, although the sphere itself was easy to see and not illuminated. The sphere appeared fixated directly to a ceiling, but not my ceiling. Seemingly, I was somehow looking through my wall and ceiling directly across the bedroom. I was looking into what appeared to be the top half of a room that was all gray. My dresser blocked the bottom half of the view. I couldn't see far into the room or make out many features, just plain gray and somewhat metallic walls, like the color of aluminum, same as the sphere. Maybe a shallow corridor of sorts. It was as if my walls and ceilings were a hologram, and this other room had ethereally pierced it then. This room contrasted my tan-colored walls, which seemed to just barely catch some awkwardly complex light from the sphere. I thought I must still be dreaming again, as I just soaked in what I was observing. Next, I felt a presence. A feeling of panic also set in, and I remember my heart rate rising. Then I could make out the silhouette of a person-like figure across the room. It had just sort of come into focus, as if it had randomly appeared or possibly come right through the bedroom wall. Immediately, I felt utterly hysterical. Again, I thought about the pistol within arm's length, glanced over and tried to reach it, but I still could not move. I did manage to wiggle my index finger slightly. I thought about how certain that I was that I had placed the handgun beside me that night and not in the safe. I looked hard at the bedside table and could barely see the camel color of the holster out of the corner of my eye. At this point, I knew that I was somehow being restrained by the paralysis. I looked back, and the dark figure was now crouching close to the left side of the footboard of the bed. It was hunched over in an odd-looking slump. I couldn't make out any details due to the backlighting from the windows and the sphere. It appeared to be massive, but somewhat lanky for its proportions, as if it had no body fat at all. Slowly, it raised up slightly while leaning towards me. I recall the figure having a longish neck, and if it had stood upright, it would be at least 7 to 9 feet tall. This explained the slouching. The silhouette of the head appeared largest, but mostly normal in proportion to the large stature of the figure's body. No silhouette of hair was visible. I had the distinct feeling that this being was masculine. I remember my panic and terror combining with rage and defensiveness. I clearly recall envisioning grasping the handle of the gun and firing multiple shots into the figure, thinking how who or whatever this thing was going to regret being here once I get my hands on the gun. Yet I still couldn't move. I wondered if the entity somehow knew of my intentions or saw the weapon and was being precautious with its slow approach. I thought if that was the case, whatever this sedative was, maybe it didn't work perfectly. After all, I was awake, seeing and thinking clearly, and had wiggled a finger earlier. I looked towards my wife, who was sleeping on her side, facing away from me, as the figure had stealthily approached on her side of the bed. Then the figure's eyes flashed a bright yellow hue, seemingly looking into my eyes, which was the first detail I remember being able to see other than a complete silhouette. This somewhat disarmed me, as it seemed almost cartoonish or too Hollywood-esque. It was extremely similar to the jungle eye flash scene from the movie Predator. I recalled the scene from the movie and immediately wanted to convince myself that I was dreaming again. My mind started racing at the possibilities of what I was encountering. I thought that if I wasn't dreaming and this thing was here to take me or us for whatever reason, I didn't think people are murdered or just disappear who claim they have been abducted. I thought maybe I could just grit my teeth and bear it, and maybe learning the truth, as scary as it may seem, is better than not knowing, even if I was to be experimented upon. maybe there was a purpose for all of this, assuming I wasn't going completely mad. I was trying very hard to rationalize what I was experiencing. At that very moment, the figure's right arm shot forcefully to my left. With blatant disregard, the thing had snatched my wife by her face, lifted her head up slightly, and pulled her towards itself as it lowered its head towards her. I witnessed this in perfect clarity as my wife and this arm were only about 18 inches away from my face. I saw every feature of the arm with extreme detail, unlike the dark silhouette from where it originated. I saw up to the being's shoulder and never saw any clothing. It was oddly muscular and blue-gray in color, definitely more blue than gray. The skin was flesh, but had a strange texture and a shimmery iridescence that specularly reflected highlights of the light shining into the room. It was not scaly or slimy, but had a rather spectacularly beautiful fine dusty appearance. Color and reflectivity of the flesh seemed to somewhat change based on the viewing angle. The arm was long and seemed to be about 4.5 to 6 feet in length. The arm was athletically well defined, but definitely was not human in proportion or appearance. The hands were quite massive and had 4 fingers, but not assembled like a hand with fingers and a thumb. The hand's arrangement was zygodactyl and closely resembled the feet of a parrot. The fingers were split bilaterally, 2 up, 2 down, and I don't recall if there were nails or claws. The fingers appeared thick, strong, and were wrapped halfway around my wife's entire head. The being was leaning in and inspecting my wife's face, but I could not make out any distinct facial features, or even more strangely, I believe that I did, but can't remember what they were. All thoughts that I was dreaming vanished immediately as this happened. Instantly, I also had the impression that this thing had malevolent intent, or perhaps, if not hostile, completely indifferent, cold, and foreign. After the brief initial intense shock, all fear left me and adrenaline took over completely. I was prepared to die fighting. My eyes squinted shut while I strained and concentrated with all my effort, mentally and physically, to get up free of the paralysis. I felt my back slightly lift off of the mattress as I strained, and heard my voice begin to return, gutturally, like when lifting extremely heavy weights. As I managed to sit up, my groans turned into a yell. At the same time, my mind went back to the gun as I opened my eyes. The room was dark. I heard my wife ask me why I had yelled. There were no lights and no dark figures. Everything was calm and normal. I sat on the side of the bed for a moment to process what I had experienced, and then laughed at the thought of such a crazy and overly vivid dream. Then I felt confused by those thoughts, as it seemed like a betrayal of my common sense. I checked my phone, and I believe I remember it being just shy of 3:30 a.m. I thought about getting up and splashing some water on my face, but it was late, and I was inexplicably calm and relaxed. I thought that if I got up, I might not fall back to sleep and be able to function at work the next day. So I laid down and just went back to sleep. The next day, after I awoke, I couldn't believe how calm I was after what had happened, that I had just dozed right back off, dream or otherwise. I thought about the details and how the event was so eerily real. I had never been so confused between what was so real and what was a dream. I went and Googled sleep paralysis, and my mind was completely put at ease with the results that I found. I didn't think about what had happened for years. In fact, until 2018, I had mostly forgotten all about it. Welcome to Famous Encounters, a captivating segment of the Strange Encounters show where we delve into some of the most renowned cases of alien abduction and UFO sightings. In this gripping series, we peel back the layers of mystery surrounding these extraordinary events, examining the accounts of those who found themselves thrust into the spotlight of the unknown. From the enigmatic tales of Roswell to the perplexing abductions of Betty and Barney Hill, we'll revisit the moments that shaped the world's perception of extraterrestrial encounters. Prepare to be spellbound as we explore the evidence, theories, and enduring questions that continue to surround these legendary incidents. So, fasten your seatbelts and brace yourself for a riveting exploration of the most well-known cases in the history of alien encounters. As we get ready to embark on a voyage through the extraordinary, we invite you to join us on this compelling journey. In this episode, we take a look at the Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting of 1947. Famous encounters: the Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting of 1947, a watershed moment in modern UFO phenomena. In UFO history, few events have captured the public's imagination and sparked the modern fascination with unidentified flying objects like the Kenneth Arnold sighting of 1947. This sighting, which took place on June 24th, not only changed the life of pilot Kenneth Arnold, but also marked a turning point in how the public perceived and discussed UFO phenomena. In this segment, we delve into the details of this historic sighting, its impact on popular culture, and its lasting legacy in the study of UFOs. The sighting. On that fateful day in 1947, Kenneth Arnold, a seasoned pilot and businessman from Boise, Idaho, found himself flying his private plane near Mount Rainier in Washington state. Around 2 p.m., while searching for a downed aircraft, Arnold's attention was captured by a peculiar sight in the sky. He observed a group of 9 strange objects flying in formation at high speeds over the Cascade Mountains. Arnold described the objects as shiny and crescent-shaped, resembling saucers or discs. He estimated their speed to be around 1,200 miles per hour, a staggering velocity that surpassed any known aircraft at the time. Astonished by what he witnessed, Arnold calculated their size to be around 50 to 60 feet in diameter. News spreads. After landing, Arnold shared his account with authorities and local news outlets. The news of Arnold's sightings spread like wildfire, capturing the public's imagination and igniting widespread curiosity about the existence of extraterrestrial life. It was during a press conference in Pendleton, Oregon, where Arnold used the term flying saucer to describe the objects, inadvertently coining a phrase that would become synonymous with UFO sightings. Public reaction. The Kenneth Arnold sighting had a profound impact on public opinion, with people captivated by the idea that we might not be alone in the universe. The incident prompted an outpouring of similar UFO reports from around the country, indicating that Arnold's sighting was not an isolated event. It sparked a wave of public interest in UFOs, leading to increased media coverage, government investigations, and scientific scrutiny. Remarkably, the Arnold sighting took place just a few short weeks before the world-famous Roswell incident of 1947. Government response. In the wake of the Arnold sighting, the U.S. government took notice and established the now famous Project Blue Book in 1952. Led by the U.S. Air Force, the project aimed to investigate UFO sightings and determine whether they posed a threat to national security. Although Arnold's sighting was not directly responsible for the creation of Project Blue Book, it undoubtedly contributed to the overall climate of intrigue and inquiry that led to its formation. The legacy. The Kenneth Arnold sighting marked a turning point in how the public and the scientific community approached UFO phenomena. It laid the groundwork for subsequent investigations and research, as well as the formation of numerous civilian UFO research organizations. Moreover, Arnold's sighting catalyzed the formation of a robust UFO subculture, with enthusiasts, skeptics, and researchers continually exploring and discussing the possibility of extraterrestrial visitation. The impact of the Kenneth Arnold sighting extended far beyond scientific and government circles. It permeated popular culture, inspiring countless books, movies, and television shows featuring UFOs and alien encounters. The sighting became a cultural touchstone, influencing the imagery and narratives associated with UFO phenomena for decades to come. Arnold's experience also played a role in shaping the enduring archetype of the flying saucer, which has become deeply ingrained in our collective consciousness. The Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting of 1947 remains one of the most important events in the history of UFO phenomena. It not only propelled the concept of unidentified flying objects into the public eye, but also contributed to the establishment of formal investigations and scientific scrutiny of UFO sightings. Arnold's detailed account, along with the subsequent surge of reports, sparked widespread curiosity about the existence of extraterrestrial life and forever changed public perception of UFOs. The lasting legacy of the Kenneth Arnold sighting can be seen in the continued fascination with UFOs and the enduring pursuit of answers to the mysteries of the universe. It has motivated countless individuals to become ufologists, researchers, and investigators, dedicating their lives to unraveling the truth behind UFO encounters. The incident also led to the development of rigorous methodologies for UFO investigations, including the collection of eyewitness testimonies, physical evidence, and photographic documentation. In addition to its impact on scientific research, the Kenneth Arnold sighting has had a profound influence on popular culture. The image of the flying saucer, inspired by Arnold's description, has become an iconic symbol associated with UFOs and alien encounters. It has been depicted in numerous movies, television shows, and works of fiction, captivating audiences and fueling their imaginations. Moreover, the Arnold sighting served as a catalyst for increased government transparency regarding UFO investigations. Project Blue Book, though established years later, was an important step towards acknowledging and studying UFO sightings systematically. While the project had its share of controversies and criticisms, it demonstrated a recognition by the US government that the UFO phenomena warranted further investigation. Decades after the Kenneth Arnold sighting, public interest in UFOs remains strong. The advancement of technology has allowed for more sophisticated means of capturing and analyzing potential UFO evidence, including radar data, thermal imaging, and satellite observations. Additionally, the proliferation of social media platforms and online communities has facilitated the sharing of UFO sightings and personal accounts, further fueling public curiosity and discussion. In conclusion, the Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting of 1947 holds a significant place in the history of UFO phenomena. Arnold's detailed observations, along with the subsequent public reaction and government response, helped shape the modern perception of UFOs. The incident spurred scientific investigations, led to the establishment of Project Blue Book, and ignited popular culture's enduring fascination with the possibility of extraterrestrial life. The legacy of the Kenneth Arnold sighting serves as a reminder that humanity's quest for answers about the universe and our place within it continues to evolve, driven by moments of intrigue, curiosity, and the pursuit of the unknown. And that concludes another mind-blowing episode of Strange Encounters. We hope you enjoyed this extraordinary dive into the realm of the unexplained. If you're hungry for more astonishing stories and want to support the channel, there are several ways you can help us continue to bring you the best content. In the description below this video, you'll find links to our Patreon, buymeacoffee.com, and PayPal Donate. Every contribution, no matter how big or small, goes a long way in fueling our exploration of the strange. Your support enables us to improve our recording equipment and enhance the production value of our videos. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with the latest strange encounters. And if you haven't already, hit that notification bell so you never miss a spine-tingling story. We want to express our heartfelt gratitude to our incredible community of truth seekers who make strange encounters possible. Your engagement, comments, and sharing of our videos help us grow and reach a wider audience of fellow explorers. If you have your own strange encounters to share or know someone who does, please send them to verystrangeencounters@gmail.com. We'd be honored to feature your stories and continue expanding our ever-growing tapestry of the unexplained. Thank you again for joining us on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies, your mind open, and remember, the truth really is out there.